Let's look at 3 big advantages of round shields. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, yesterday I released a video talking about why there are so many different sizes and shapes of shield, and that was a rather big video, but nevertheless, as always, there are some things I can't cover entirely within one video, and in fact, while I was editing that video, I realised that there was one point which I meant to mention during that video which I neglected to. So I'm going to include that in this, but we're going to look at 3 advantages of round shields. Now, before we look at those 3 advantages of round shields, I just want to mention it is noticeable. I think everyone just knows what shields look like. Yeah, you know what a kite shield looks like. You know what the typical later medieval knightly shield looks like. You know what a Roman scutum looks like. You know what a Viking shield looks like. Actually, these ideas of shields are very well established cemented in our mind and our knowledge of history, and even to the point where you see someone with a Roman shield and you think Roman. It's very, very Italian. You know what a knight shield looked like. You know what a Norman shield looks like. You know what a Viking shield looks like. So when you see those things, you make a lot of assumptions about the person that's carrying it. So sometimes when we actually know quite a lot about shields, even just an average person on the street without realizing it knows quite a lot about shields. When you know that information, sometimes the drawback of that knowledge is you don't question things about what you know. One of those things that I think is interesting is throughout history, round shields, whether we go back to antiquity, the famous hoplite shield, of course, is round, but if we come to later periods, if we look at 19th century Indian dal, like those behind me, or if we look at various other, the rotella, as it's sometimes called a rondash in museum circles, but a rotella, so the round dome shield, basically one of these. Used in 16th century Italy. So round shields you can find throughout history in many different cultures, many different parts of the world. You can find them in China, you can find them all over Southeast Asia, you can find them in Africa, in the Sudan, you can find them all over Europe at different times. So the round shield is actually quite a universal thing that you can find in a lot of different places and times. The question is, why? And I'm not going to answer that in this video, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and ideas on this. Why are round shields so popular and so universal? Why do you find circular shields? Why are they kind of on world terms more popular than elongated shields or square shields or whatever? So interested to hear your ideas on that. But now we're going to look at 3 advantages, according to Matt Easton, for round shields. Incredibly briefly before I go on, I just want to mention Olight, the famous torch company, who sent me quite a number of torches actually recently. They are having a flash sale that is on right now, right at the moment, and there's a discount code. They've sponsored this channel by saying there's a discount code for viewers. I've had this for the last couple of weeks, and it's really awesome. My garden is incredibly dark at night, and I often have to do things with animals or bins, and this is super useful. You can hook it on. There's also a head thing, so you can wear it on your head, although I haven't actually used that yet. I just clipped this on the edge of my jacket, but really, really cool. Anyway, go and check out that below. Now back to the main topic of this video. So the first advantage that I think that round shields have are that very often when you're actually kind of moving around, marching, traveling, fighting, doing whatever you have to do, you're going to change the position of your arm. And one of the advantages of a round shield is it doesn't look any different and it doesn't provide any more inconvenience when you do that. So if I'm riding a horse, holding the reins here, if I'm scratching the back of my head, if I'm just walking along like this with the thing just dangling down, not in any kind of defensive position, the shield doesn't look any different, which aesthetically might be preferable somehow, but more importantly, it doesn't provide any great inconvenience or in fact kind of discomfort. And as an extreme example of I've got 2 here, I've got the Norman kite shield and the Roman scutum we're going to look at. That's not the case with these. In fact, very often with a Norman shield you have a guige or strap, so you can actually wear the thing, but if you want to kind of let your arm go down here, that is particularly inconvenient and not very comfortable, because you've got the weight of the end of the shield sort of dragging your arm around, and if you turn around you're going to smack your colleagues, you're going to get it hitting on a tree or a doorway, you're going to get stuck going through doors, getting on your horse, it might get tangled in the horse's legs. So this might be absolutely fantastic defensively when it's in the fighting position, or even when you're riding on a horse. But just in terms of everyday life, this thing is quite a nuisance and really gets in the way. If we go to a boss grip shield, you could say this becomes even worse in a way, because you're holding the thing like this. You can only hold this one downwards, okay, because it's the Roman scutum with a horizontal grip. But if it had a vertical grip, you've now got this weird position, especially because this is a curved shield as well, that you just, you can't stick it in any other position. Oh, I need to scratch the back of my head, or my helmet's come down a bit over my eyes. Put the thing down, put the helmet back up, pick the shield back up. So actually, long shields in particular, and big shields, are a real nuisance. Whereas if we come to the kind of Dark Ages shield, dead easy. It's lighter in this case, because obviously it's smaller than those. But wherever I go with it, if I have to scratch my head, adjust my helmet, walking along the street, going through a doorway, it's not going to catch on things, it's not going to get in the way, it's not going to cause me discomfort. Anything which has an odd shape and corners, even just a relatively small knightly shield, is going to stand more of a chance of being uncomfortable or inconvenient, or just like look really weird if you move its position around. Now, the next advantage of the round shield is you have got a completely equal and circular edge, which is actually quite advantageous in combat when the opponent's trying to manipulate your shield. Yes, they can still push your shield, they can ram your shield into you, they can still get their grip around the edge and pull the shield out and things like this. Anything like an axe blade can still be put behind to hook. But the fact that it's circular does mean that things are more likely to glance off and move off, and it's less easy for an opponent to manipulate my shield to open me up, to offend me. Famously, people who love Dane axes, or great axes as they're probably more correctly called in period, like to demonstrate the fact that you can hook the bottom of the kite shield, the Norman kite shield, and manipulate the person. You can hook it that way, or you can hook it that way, and you essentially put an arm lock on the person. And to a degree that's true, and you don't need specifically a Dane axe to do that. You can do it with a winged spear, you can even do it with a kick, all things like this. So when you have angles or projections coming out of something, it becomes easier to manipulate. This is also true of the Roman scutum as well, because you've got corners here, and those corners are easier to manipulate than a round shield is. And same with the knightly shield as well. Having a point on the bottom and having corners at the top means that you can hook and manipulate those things, and they're more likely to get caught as well. So flipping this around, that's the deliberate aspect of getting caught. There's the accidental end of getting caught as well. And when you've got projecting corners, or any kind of projecting bits really that aren't a perfect circle, they are more likely to get caught up on a horse's reins, or other parts of its equipment, or parts of your armour or clothing, or people you're fighting next to. It's more likely to get caught on you. If you've got a corner, it's more likely to get caught under your mate's pauldron next to you or whatever. So circular shields, I think that is an advantage for them. They're less likely to catch on things, and also they're less likely to be caught deliberately by the opponent. Now, the final of the three advantages that I want to list for circular shields, and bear in mind, I'll just reiterate once again that these circular shields have been hugely popular throughout history in many, many different places when those people could have had other shaped shields, but they went for circular ones. Why? And this is another potential reason why. And I meant to mention this in the video I released yesterday, and I forgot to. And quite simply, it's that shields have an orientation, okay? So when you're looking at fighting someone, if we take an exaggerated example being the Norman kite shield, when you're fighting against someone, you can tell certain things about their body positioning, what they're intending to do, where the points of leverage and strength and weakness are, in terms of their shield and how they're holding a shield based on the angle that they're holding it at. So for example, if I'm fighting with a Norman shield, the opponent probably knows pretty soon on what sort of position my hand is in, and if they see my shield do this or do that, or indeed even open up in this angle as well, it tells them certain things from my body language about what I'm intending to do, where I feel exposed, where I feel vulnerable, what I'm intending to do to them, if I'm intending to plough my shield into part of their body or their weapon, engage their weapon, or into their shield, to try and ram my shield into their shield to create an opening. So if you've got this big emblem symbol in front of you, and in this case it's teardrop shaped, you can see a lot of things, you get a lot of visual information about what I'm intending to do or what I am doing, based on that shape and how that shape is angled and moving. When you have a circular object, you can no longer necessarily tell which way round my hand is. Now, why is this important? Well, there are many reasons. Which way round my hand is and how my hand's positioned, as I say, tells you lots of things about my intentions and also maybe my concerns, but it gives the opponent information that enables them to beat me, fundamentally. Now, if my hand is, if we turn around here so you can see, if it is, say, horizontal or vertical or diagonal, that tells you things about, for example, with a buckler, where I'm expecting a blow to come in from. The reason is because this, unfortunately for boss grip shields particularly, is a pivot point. Now, there are pivot points on strap shields as well. I'll talk about those in a second. But if we just look at the boss grip shield, and obviously this can be applied to the larger Viking era shield as well, or any other boss grip shield, even a Roman shield, this is a pivot point. Now, if I'm expecting a blow to come in here, very clearly I'm going to want to turn my shield there so that I can oppose it with my lever, okay? Because what I don't want to do is receive a blow there, have that collapse, and it will just plough through and hit me in the head. So if I turn around so you can see this way, if I'm fighting with a sword and buckler, where I direct my hand and therefore my arm and body and everything else is very, very important information if you're fighting against someone. If you're fighting against someone with a larger shield, it is exactly the same situation. If you want to manipulate someone's shield, clearly you want to do it where they are weak. You don't want to do it where they're strong, okay? So knowing what the opponent's doing with this is very important, and when you have a circular shield, you can hide that. Now, some of you, particularly with this shield, will be thinking, but Matt, this has got a design on it. So you can actually see when I turn this. And yeah, that's true. And that might have repercussions when we think about what designs are actually put on shields. You might think about, well, perhaps there's some element of having designs or heraldry or whatever on shields, which actually doesn't necessarily give that away as easily as this big cross does. But I think you also want to bear in mind that the opponent doesn't necessarily know if the orientation of this cross is in line with the grip. And here's a bit of archaeology that I've never heard anyone else talk about. Perhaps people painting designs on shields would deliberately misalign them with the grip to throw the opponents off. Now that I've thought of it, it's something that I want to do, and I'm now regretting that this cross is in perfect alignment with the grip. And actually, if it was slightly off, you could quite fox opponents if they were clever enough and experienced enough to realise that they can tell quite a lot about the orientation of my hand based on watching this shield. But nevertheless, going back to the fundamental point that a round shield disguises the orientation, and even if an opponent, for example in this case, even if an opponent has worked out that 5 seconds ago my arm was pointing diagonally upwards, if I move the shield so my arm's pointing horizontal, that's a very subtle movement and far harder to see with a round shield than it would be with a kite shield or indeed any sort of pavis or Roman scutum, for example, where clearly this enormous rectangle tilting is something you can see very, very easily, and much more easily than a round shield. And also just to emphasise that although I demonstrated the strong and the weak with the pivot point with the boss grip shield, this also applies to strap shields. except they're even stronger in this plane. So the ability to manipulate the shield in this direction is very, very slim, but you can still manipulate it in these directions quite a lot. So if you're trying to get past someone's shield, knowing which direction either their arm or if it's boss gripped, their hand is in, is really, really useful information, because that shield is the biggest thing stopping you from getting to them and taking them out of the game. So there you go. I hope those are 3 things. Maybe you wouldn't have thought of any of those things about round shields. And again, I'll just emphasize the question of why do you think round shields have been so popular throughout history in so many different places and times? Why weren't rectangular shields more popular? Why weren't teardrop shields more popular in more places? I think it's an interesting point, and because we're so familiar with shields, it's one that we don't necessarily ask, because we know so much about shields that we make a lot of assumptions about shields and therefore don't ask some really obvious questions that actually need to be asked. Anyway, as I said, check out the Olight link below. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you really soon again. Any questions, welcome below, and I'll see you soon again on the channel for another video about shields or something else. If you've got anything particular you'd like me to cover, you're always welcome to post it in the comments below, and maybe if it's interesting enough, I'll pick it up. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.